Okay, let's start. Good afternoon. Welcome to this NITheCS Colloquium. Today we are in the NITheCS headquarters because the Niels kicked us out for December for whatever reason, but it doesn't matter. We are here with our friends and we are very happy about that. Yeah? And one particular friend that we need to greet today is Dr. Farai Mlambo, yeah, from BITS. Yeah, he's a mathematical statistics guy by training, and he's also the program director of the postgraduate diploma in digital business at the WITS Business School, and also a lecturer in the WITS Business School. Yeah? He also a fellow in the New or Newish Mind Institute at WITS, which stands for Machine Intelligence and Neural Discovery Institute. Yeah, so well done for that. And most importantly, he's a NITheCS associate. But today he won't speak about statistics. Yeah, he will speak more about education, maybe. Yeah, or yeah, because he recently wrote a very nice book that I'm sure he will show you just now on a survival guide for postgraduate journeys. Yeah. So Farai, we are here very happy to listen to what you have to tell us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thanks so much for coming, colleagues. I really appreciate. I think this is a beautiful venue, I must say. I know the other one looks nice on the inside, but here we're on the same level. It's my second NITheCS Colloquium for this year, and I feel like I'm becoming part of the furniture here. But well, I think VIT is part of NITheCS anyway. So colleagues, I'm here to talk about the postgraduate journey. I think last time I was here, I was talking about data science and the statistical foundations of data science, etc. And I'm so glad to see the colleagues of familiar faces that were there in the previous session. So without further ado, maybe let me just get into my presentation quickly, which I think we're already sharing here. So, okay, I just need to minimize something. Give me a second, please. I think there's just something I need to minimize. Okay, good. So, wait. Yes, great. Okay, the introduction. A master's or a PhD is really more than an academic qualification, I claim. I think it's a journey of personal transformation, which is really rooted on, how you relate to failure and how you view progress and things like that. I mean, one has got to discover themselves. Maybe instead of discovering physics or discovering mathematics. And it's a pity that, we register to discover maybe sociology, but then you end up discovering yourself. And that is what this talk is really all about. So if you think about, I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. The journey is one of the most intellectually fulfilling, but it is really emotionally demanding. Do we agree on that? I'm a teacher, by the way, so I will ask you questions now and then. I hope you can also enjoy my jokes in the near future. This one is the first one, yeah. So a lot of students, when they start this, begin with enthusiasm. When you register for a PhD, for example, I think most of us go to LinkedIn and you update your status as a PhD candidate. And people congratulate you for beginning your PhD. But then there's a lot of obstacles that are not only academic, but more psychological. And of course, there will be some institutional hurdles as well. I think we're all agreeing so far. These include prolonged silence from supervisors, right? This is quite a pain for a lot of students. And I'm sorry, I'm one of those supervisors, by the way, who can be quiet for some time. Especially if I realize that, our meetings are soon becoming political meetings where there's no progress and, people want to just talk. Then sometimes supervisors withdraw a bit, etc. I can see people online are enjoying the jokes more than people in the room. But then, of course, there's issues to do with self-doubt and research fatigue. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. One has got to have that mindset. And of course, it's very isolating. The idea of being a scholar is a very isolating endeavor. The pyramid goes up. You start 100 in the same class, sometimes even 400, etc. at undergraduate level. But at PhD level, you might be the only candidate who is doing PhD from your village or from your town sometimes. So the transition from coursework to independent research is actually a very subtle one. And this is what I'm advocating for here, that we need to think about it very differently. A lot of people who excel at undergraduate level don't seem to get it when they go to postgraduate level, particularly because the transition is not spoken about and what it requires, etc. There's no structure, of course, and there's ambiguity, and navigating all this is very difficult. And there's a switch from getting questions and looking for answers, like we do in an undergraduate course. You get questions and you must look for answers in an assignment. But at postgraduate level, you must look for questions. I'm pausing there because I think this is a very important point. So the idea of looking for questions instead of looking for answers, I think this is a very difficult thing to think about. And well, there's no right answer in research. I think we all agree on that. This requires, this shift demands not only methodological competence, which is very important, but it also requires emotional resilience and, of course, identity development. Technical skills are very vital, but they're often insufficient to sustain the momentum that is required in this marathon, particularly at PhD level. You can be the most intelligent person, but I've advocated for the fact that, to get a PhD, you don't need to be the most intelligent person. You need to be the marathon runner. Well, I think this explains why some of our colleagues, even in academia, fail to get PhDs. Most of them being the so-called A students. I don't know if you have them here at Stellenbosch, but at Wits, we have quite a number of those who go to the classroom with chalk without a textbook, and they write everything on the board without a textbook. But a PhD is very different from writing a 5-page formula on the board without looking at the formula again. That was a joke, but maybe not too funny. So what students need is rather a guide that acknowledges both the cognitive and the affective dimensions of the postgraduate journey. And this is what I'm advocating for. Look at this. I know there's academics here, and we love literature, right? This is a recent paper published actually in 2025, December 2025. Some colleagues here from Sweden, look at what they saw here. From 20,000 PhD students across all disciplines, population study. They actually tracked prescriptions for psychiatric medication. It's becoming a bit serious now, right? Psychiatric medication before, during, and after doctoral studies. Look at what they saw. Before starting their PhDs, future doctoral students showed the same rate of psychiatric medication use as the other people with a master's degree. But once their PhD began, medication rose sharply, increasing by roughly 40%. Okay, over the first 5 years. After graduation, what happened? The rate declined, but it remained higher than before the PhD. Okay. This pattern held across fields, whether you're doing mechanical engineering or you're doing digital arts, or it didn't matter. Gender didn't matter too. Socioeconomic group also didn't matter. I think there was just one exception, which is the students from the medical and the health sciences could explain. This could be self-explanatory, right? Maybe because they understand mental health a little more than other people, Yeah, but this joke is not too funny too, I see. The increase also extended in hospitalizations for psychiatric diagnosis, suggesting a genuine deterioration in mental health. This is serious, colleagues. Mental health is serious in academia. The study's strength lies in the fact that it's a population-wide study, etc. It provides some causal evidence. We can say this is causal, that the PhD process itself can really take a measurable toll on mental health. Okay. No wonder why it's called the permanent head damage. Okay, beyond individual suffering, these findings raise rather systematic questions. I see a raised hand, but maybe we'll take questions at the end, right? Maybe they can type so long. If the idea is, do we need to suffer psychiatric or rather mental health problems for us to earn our keep in academia? That's the question that we're raising here. I don't think that is fair. How might institutions better support early career researchers without normalizing distress, etc.? Academic excellence really should not come at the cost of well-being. Do we agree on that, perhaps? Okay. So this study really shows that it's impossible to ignore this concept we're talking about. Okay, this is the study I'm referring to, Journal of Health Economics. Something good to look at. I can always share the slides with the colleagues and share it with everybody. Okay, so again, this is what I was talking about earlier, but maybe just rephrasing it a little. Why survival guide? Because I'm also introducing the guide here. By the way, I do have a copy here if you want to just pass it through whilst I talk. Why survival guide? The point is, all this enthusiasm and that comes with starting a degree, a postgraduate degree, really doesn't materialize into some of the benefits that people are looking for when they actually start. And I'm going to show some statistics now, very shocking statistics. Look at this. This is in the US. So this is not an African problem. In the US, only about 56% of doctoral students complete their degrees within 10 years. 56% within 10 years. I think Prof. Kancho did his PhD overseas, right? In the US, he's on the 44 side. But this joke is not funny too. How about in Europe? The completion rates range between 45% to 65% with significant variation, of course, between country and institution. In Australia, 50% of doctoral candidates complete, I think, within 8 years. Australia. How about here in SA? Only about 30%, fewer than 30%, complete within 5 years. Okay, this is shocking, right? Master's completion rates are also very low. Look at this letter. This is the time to laugh. If you can't laugh here, I don't know when you're going to laugh. This is a resignation letter that a PhD student has sent to their professor. Fortunately, it's not Professor Francisco, Professor Daniel. I've spent 729 years, sorry, not years, days, at this university. You kept telling me, Chris, you need to change the world, but honestly, I can't even change myself. I'm seeking peace and life far away from this PhD pursuit. God bless you. God bless all of you. You know, it's a PhD student who is expressing the fact that they have to go. Okay. I hope we're not having people like that here. This one is more interesting, I think. They actually finished. This one actually finished, but now they're writing in the acknowledgements section of their thesis. And they say here, to my family who silently enjoyed my absence, my frustrations, and my endless preoccupation with research, have you noticed that people who are doing research, they can actually look at a very good meal and they don't enjoy the meal because they're thinking about the thesis? Okay. Your sacrifices are woven into every page of this thesis. Without your prayers and love and patience, this work wouldn't have existed. On the one hand, I'm happy to have graduated. On the other, I'm a bit sad to still be single at 34. My hair is gone and I can't afford a transplant. The funny thing is my supervisor is now encouraging me to continue with a postdoc. I'm tired, hair gone, social relationships gone, wife gone. Now all I want is peace. Okay. All right, colleagues. So what does the book offer? The book offers 30 hard truths in plain language. I was so impressed. I was at UJ doing the book launch last week on Thursday. And the lady who was doing the MC there, she's actually a bank executive. I know those people are very busy too. But she said she read the book in 1 week. And I was very impressed. So I think this is what I was trying to do when I was writing the book. I wanted something that even an undergraduate student can read easily. You know, so it's not a research methodology textbook, or, you know, with structural equation modeling or, you know, neural network, this and this. I mean, it's plain English. It presents 30 short and resonant chapters that you can read in moments of motivation and despair, etc. Sometimes philosophical, yes, but there's also some practical tools that we provide, all speaking to the emotional and psychological truths that often go unspoken. You see, some of the things that I'm going to mention here, they're a bit provocative. People might think, but why do you speak like that? But I think it's good to speak the truth than to say, go and discover it yourself. Okay. So here's seeing that I'm at Stellenbosch University, how brilliant is that for me to show that our DVC here, Professor Moyo, also contributed. She wrote a foreword for me. I think it was a very generous one. I just put 2 paragraphs here. There's more that she wrote. It would be great for you to get a copy for yourself. Again, I'm doing some marketing there, right? Okay, so yeah, very, very brilliant foreword she wrote. Then Professor Lynn Morris from Wits also, you can see I was very political here, right? I made sure that I get a forward for my own institution as well. So yeah, brilliant stuff that they put. Okay, here's a thematic overview of the book. So these are the 5 themes that I present, but they all relate to the emotional journey of the postgraduate, degrees, master's, PhD. I think it's still applicable to postdocs as well, and even early career academics, etc. So the first theme, I take this very seriously, and I think this is a very important theme. In fact, when someone was asking, when we did the launch at this business school, what would you say? What one thing would you advise students if you're going to advise students? I was like, ownership. To me, ownership is very important. So one is going to understand the fact that the degree is your degree, right? You're not doing the degree for your supervisor or for your spouse or for your employer. It's your degree. If you've got to get this thing going, there's a lot of ownership demanded from, particularly if you're doing a PhD. If the supervisors, if you go quiet, they'll also go quiet. They will not look for you, right? I had a supervisor like that when I did my PhD. And I thought that was a brilliant supervisor, that wouldn't look for me, But I see students get emotional with this stuff. Okay, emotional resilience and self-compassion. Then the research process itself is a very complicated process. And the mindset required for the research process is a very important mindset, where you have got to relate to the fact that you don't know where you're going, for example. My PhD supervisor used to say that, very brilliant mathematician, I guess, from the Soviet Union there, up there. And he used to say, if we know where we're going, then it's not research. And that was very confusing for me, because as an undergraduate student, you typically get a course outline, and there's a prescribed textbook. But with research, I've learned to understand the fact that there's no map. There's no map. You start going to Stellenbosch and you end up in Port Elizabeth from Johannesburg. So how does that happen? That's research. You discover as you go, right? I hope we agree on that. Academic culture, this becomes very important too, things to do with the difference between mentorship and supervision. I had to forget for the fact that a student has got to understand the fact that you might be looking for mentorship from your supervisor, but you might get mentorship from elsewhere. You can get mentorship from colleagues in the lab where you're studying, or, from LinkedIn. You can follow people like myself. You was telling me that you follow us being, you can join WhatsApp groups. You can get mentorship from someone who is in chemistry when you are doing visual arts. Mentorship, of course, I think some supervisors can do both, but I don't think it would be fair for you to expect your supervisor to do everything. It might be a good reflection for supervisors to also think about mentorship. And I think there's supervisors here, right? By the way, in the book, we also talk about some form of reflection for supervisors, institution, and peers. I'm going to show you now. So then this last theme here is very important, of course. We can't ignore the fact that, you've got to look for yourself. There's no one who is going to look after yourself after you, if you don't look after yourself. So here is the framework that I use. I think it's quite a brilliant framework, actually, because these 3 things here, they're obvious, right? But think about the role of peer support. I've said when I'm presenting this book before, I've said to some in some other settings that, you know, if your email is not working, you don't have to look for your supervisor to tell your supervisor that my email is not working. You know, you know, if your program, whether you're using Python or something, you know, you can get some support from your peers, even, you know. So you find that these peers can be within your institution. You can see this part here. But they can also be actually outside your institution there. They can be within your institution, with the same supervisor somewhere there, right? But they can actually be people within your institution, but who are not part of your supervisor's team and things like that. You know, again, academic politics can jump in there, but I do advocate for the fact that as a student, you must stay outside of departmental politics. I can see Prof laughing there. It's very real, academic politics is very real. I'll touch a bit on it maybe later on. There is an appendix on that. Okay, so this is just a description of the role that the student is expected to play. Of course, the student is a driver. Do we agree on this? Student is a driver. Think about your research as the car. It has got to go somewhere. The supervisor is sitting on the passenger seat. A lot of students don't agree with this, but I've said to students, as a supervisor, I'm not there to cut trees for you. I'm just there to remind you if you're still in the right forest or not. I see supervisors are enjoying this part. But let's move. Mentorship and intellectual guidance and, you know, shaping the research process through feedback, etc. And this feedback does not have to be editorial. I've said this to students, and students don't kind of appreciate this, but they will soon appreciate the fact that your supervisor is not your English editor. Okay, the room is getting tense now, but let's move. The institution has got to provide, of course, an enabling environment. And I mean, Stellenbosch University is up there in terms of providing. I've seen a lot of work that is happening here. I wish I could do you know, some studies here. Students who are studying here, you are in a very fortunate position, I believe. Okay, the role of peer support, which is invisible. I've claimed that this circle, or rather this support, is as big as you want it, as small as you want it. So the students who isolate themselves, particularly international students, you know, you find that sometimes the student, the only person they know at the institution is their supervisor. That's a very I don't know how you can present it, but you're kind of robbing yourself if you do that as a student, particularly at PhD level. There's a lot you can learn from other people and not just from your supervisor. Okay, so your supervisor is not like your tutor. You know, it's not like a tutor. It's more like your peer. In fact, where I did my PhD, they used to talk about the fact that at PhD you don't have a supervisor. They say you have a promoter. There's a subtle difference between the two. So a promoter cannot change your direction, but a supervisor can change your direction. I hope that got home, right? The promoter is there to promote your work. Of course, the role of peer study groups. We've started this at this as well, by the way. There's something we call accountability circles. So that proves to be very useful. The idea that if you want to get work done, get someone, preferably not your friend, that you commit your plans to, and they commit their plans to you. And this person does not have to be a friend. It must be someone who can actually call you at 2 a.m. and tell you, you did not show me that progress. What's happening, you know? And some people end up finishing their PhDs based on that fact, that, you know, there's someone, they promise that I'm going to finish my chapter 3 on Monday, you know, and Sunday evening you are sweating. Okay, it sounds like a joke, but it works. Okay, here's the first theme, ownership and responsibility. Let's get into some of the stuff. Part-time study is not spare time study. Do you agree on this? Okay. I think that's a very important thing. That's my first chapter. In fact, I think that's a very difficult thing to start with. I started with time management, actually. This is a time management issue. The fact that some people go to parties and do everything else and then look for the remaining time to do research. And it doesn't work, right? Look at the next one. This one is not good for students. Your supervisor is not your English editor. Okay? What do I mean by this? The fact is, yes, supervisors can, in your early drafts, they can tell you that you are not writing well here, write like this, write like this. But to expect your supervisor to read your whole thesis, which is like 300 pages, and go word for word, etc. I know the supervisors would do that, but I find it very difficult to do that as a supervisor. Sometimes you're supervising 20 students, etc. In different things. In fact, some of my best students, they actually did things that I didn't know. And I found that to be very interesting. The fact that me as a supervisor, I'm learning, right? It's more of a joke, but I think Stellenbosch and BITS and UCT, we get very good students, right? To the extent that, they can do most of the work, and, we can guide them whether they're still in the right forest, etc. But if a student is going to ask me how do I switch on the chainsaw, then I'll direct them to YouTube, right? How does that sound? After this, I'm losing students, it looks like. Whoever wanted me to co-supervise them, they are not coming. Your supervisor guides, but you drive. I think this is very clear. It's all under the theme of ownership and responsibility. Okay? You must learn to work independently. By the way, there's a misconception in the idea of interdisciplinary studies. I've been approached quite a number of times, being a statistician. Sometimes students in the clinical sciences or in engineering, they'll approach me to want me to co-supervise their work. And you know what is the purpose for that? They're looking for a statistician to do the stats. Okay. Then the moment I mention that I'm not going to do the stats, but I can point you into different directions where you can find resources, then all of a sudden they don't want you anymore. How does that sound? Okay. It's rough, but I guess it's good information, particularly for students. Deadlines. This is a big one. I think a lot of academics, because we are so used to knowing how we can do things quickly, we tend to leave things for too late sometimes. I used to have a colleague when I was in the School of Statistics and Actuarial Science at WITS, who was known that for the fact that when the students write the paper will be hot. You know why is the paper hot? Because it got printed when he's walking into the test. But that's a very risky approach to life, right? So you've got to manage your deadlines, etc. Productivity tools. I've advocated for the fact that some of the most beautiful projects that I have seen did not come from the top of the range computers. So you find students who spend 3-4 months saying, I'm getting the best computer, I'm getting the best software, but the work is not getting done. Okay. So productivity tools do help, but you've got to be disciplined. You've got to do the work. This is all under ownership and responsibility. Emotional resilience. This is very important. And this is, of course, the core message you're trying to drive in the book. Rejection is part of the process. So if you're not used to getting some form of rejection at postgraduate level, you get a very good lesson. I mean, everything you do at postgraduate level comes with some form of rejection. Whether it's a proposal you're presenting in front of a panel, there will be a professor sitting at the back that you can see that he's not agreeing with what you're saying. And he will make it clear when you're done that, you missed this, you missed this, you missed that, But it's all boils the fact that they're trying to improve the work. The whole premise of peer review is to improve the work. And we talk about that here, particularly when we say not all feedback is personal. It's a very simple truth, but I guess it's a hard truth because someone will be like, but the way they wrote this feedback, I've got to go and sleep first before I can read this. I received such feedback when I was a master's student. We submitted my master's work back then, I think more than 10 years now ago, to some local journal. And the feedback I got there was very nasty. I actually reflect on it in the book as well. Every chapter comes with my personal reflection as well. Maybe not to be some form of authority, but just to show that this is happening to everybody. Okay. Perfectionism. This is a hectic one, right? A lot of students want to perfect a paragraph before it actually makes it to the paper. You cannot perfect your ideas. All you can perfect is your writing, and good writing is actually rewriting, and that's what we advocate for there. The fact that a draft is a draft; it's not the final submission, and this is part of that thing. A PhD can be very lonely, but you're not alone. There's a lot of people struggling the same way you're struggling, and you've got to find them, right? So this is a joke, but you've got to find the other people who are struggling the same way you're struggling. And you can find them in communities, of support. If you go to writing retreats and all that, you find people in the same shoes that you are wearing, right? The imposter syndrome, we're talking about this just now, during lunch, I think. This is very important. The fact that, you wake up with a lot of enthusiasm that I'm going to solve, I don't know, in economics, I saw prof from economics there, I'm going to solve the problem that Keynes or Adam Smith proposed, one day, and the next day you wake up thinking that I think my real job is in the factory, I'm supposed to be wearing a blue suit in the factory somewhere there, not these white collar jobs and stuff, So that's what research does. It's a roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster. And, one day you feel like genius. The other day you feel like, you're a fraud. And normalizing these emotional highs and lows is what we're trying to do in the book. So we're just advocating for the fact that whatever you're going through is normal. Okay. I'm sure even Prof, very achieved physics prof here, he can wake up thinking that maybe physics is not his thing. I don't want to put him in the spotlight, but of course, comparison. Try and not compare yourself too much. I mean, and this is where now social media kills us. You wake up like now in December or April, you wake up, people are walking on the stage, yeah? People are walking on the stage, on LinkedIn, I'm delighted to tell everyone that I just finished my PhD. And in the meantime, you are struggling with the proposal. So you start to compare. I mean, you start going to those people's profiles to see how old is this one? How old is this one? They just finished now. And you might actually realize that they're 10 years younger than you. Then, of course, I think your joy is gone, right? But we advocate here for the fact that comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, look, we are all in different races. I mean, rather journeys. Your journey is unique. That's what I'm advocating for here. Then the research mindset and the research process. This is very important. In fact, I've started presenting some. I did this with UJ and I think even Nelson Mandela, my alma mater. I've started presenting seminars on what I call the research mindset. So there's a lot of seminars that are provided out there on research methodology, writing, literature review, but I think the mindset is very important. So some of the things that we're going to talk about here, we kind of present that, the idea that, data will never be perfect. So at an undergraduate level, we are exposed to this idea of, a perfect data set that you're given in a textbook, but there's nothing like that in practice. Data is always messy this one is quite an important one for me because I experienced this myself firsthand when I was a PhD student. I printed a textbook. I was working on wavelets and stuff, Prof. You would know. I was proposing some wavelet basis for cycles and economic and financial cycles and things like that. So, I mean, wavelets are not kind of covered in standard, undergraduate studies, whether you're doing applied maths, etc. You can go as far as maybe Fourier and other issues, etc. But the point is, I actually printed a textbook and I would go to the library and I would study that textbook. What was happening? I was avoiding research. And that's what I advocate for here. That reading is necessary, but endless reading is avoidance. You're trying to appease yourself that I'm doing research, but you're not doing research. If you're going to read the whole day without going to the computer to do some simulation or writing something, then it's not research. Well, I think that's up for grabs, right? your research will evolve. And this is a very difficult one. I think some of the things that people propose in their master's and PhD thesis or dissertation is not exact. If you go and compare those two, you see that one is going east, the other one might be going west. So what are we saying? Research evolves. And of course, you need to be able to measure the fact that moving in the direction that you thought is an opposite direction is still movement, right? So the way you measure progress is very different. And I've kind of thought that I think this is kind of a good encouragement for students. Think about a conference. You're sitting, you are presenting at a conference. You're presenting your final paper for your PhD. And then some old professor says, you have not considered this paper and this paper and that paper. I think what you're doing there is not up to scratch. If you think about the mindset we have at an undergraduate level, and the professor asks you, do you know about this? Do you know about this? You kind of paralyze because you don't know what the professor is talking about. You don't know what the professor is talking about. But then I've advocated for the fact that you can actually, in that space, for example, respond and say, I don't know I don't know those papers, but I feel that they're very important. When I go back to my university, I'm going to speak to my supervisor and we'll take that into consideration. So what am I saying? I'm saying you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know everything. And you find, like they say, the lawyer does not need to know the law, but they need to know where to find the law. How is that? If you look at your thesis, or rather, if you look at completed thesis, a lot of new students are very much in doubt of whether they can achieve it also or not, because a thesis comes sometimes with 10 chapters, right? Or less. But the point is, it's a thick document, which has been compiled for the last 5 years or so. So now here I'm advocating for the fact that one should be able to break a thesis into small, manageable goals, etc. I mean, the mathematicians sitting here, they would tell you about fractals, etc. The point is the structure a tree has is the same structure that the leaf has. It's just a different scale. So if you think about a thesis, the same structure you have in the thesis, you can see in the chapters, in the sections, it's small things put together that makes that big thing, right? Data is never perfect. This is very difficult for people to understand, particularly people who are using primary data. There's a lot of nuances that come with primary data. You know, if you collect data from questionnaires and stuff, I mean, where you're expecting people to be talking about a salary in a township, someone might be interested in putting billions there, right? Right. That was a joke, but I see someone online got it. Writing takes longer than you think. I've advocated for the fact that as an examiner myself, if something was written 2 weeks before the submission, I can see it. Yeah. And what do you think the mark would be? Not far from 50. Whether above 50 or below 50, that's a conversation for a different day. But all I'm saying is you can't write a thesis the night before, like you do for an assignment at undergraduate level, you know. I mean, writing takes long, and it takes longer than most people think. The process requires patience, etc. The first draft will be bad, but that's okay, isn't it? It's meant to be a draft. I've spoken to supervisors who say they actually want about 10 drafts. I don't go as far as 10. I go maximum 3. But the point is, a draft is a draft. So if you're going to expect to see a final product when you are submitting a first draft, then you are expecting too much from yourself. And I think one of the best things to do in academia is to try to not overestimate your intelligence, right? Yeah. So don't expect the first draft to be a perfect draft. That's all I'm saying. Be kind to yourself. Let the supervisor give you feedback. Before you even take it to the supervisor, you can take it to some of your peers, etc., and they can give you feedback, etc. Improvements never end. This is more for people who are finishing now. So you find these people who think that they can continue working on the same work, etc. I mean, look, there's more important work you can do after your PhD. You've got to submit. If you have done the work, you've ticked the boxes, you've got to submit the work. And I advocate for this. You can see this is the last chapter, right? That's the last chapter. So the journey has got to stop somehow. They talk about the law of diminishing returns, right? So you get to a point where you spend 8 hours looking at the same chapter and you see that you have not changed more than 3 lines. I mean, it's time to stop, right? But don't stop too early. My jokes are not that funny. But this is for supervisors. I think I've talked about students already, the fact that you can look for mentorship. But I think from a supervisor point of view, it'd be great for supervisors to become mentors too. Sometimes, supervisors are very strong on the technical side of the work. But if a student sends an email, they say, I'm not feeling well this week, and the supervisor feels like, what does your health got to do with the work we're doing? I mean, that's a sign that you're not a good mentor, right? I mean, there's an opportunity that comes in the next lab, and then you feel like, no, you belong to me. You belong to me. You can't get that job. I think that's a sign again of there's no mentorship there, right? Supervisors, I'm sorry for putting you in the spotlight, but I think that's something for us to reflect on. Networking is just as important as research. In fact, where I come from at this, they're starting now to talk about visibility. I think they even want to talk about conferences on research visibility, etc. This is very important, I think. There's a lot of people in academia who do exciting stuff, but no one knows about it. No one knows about it. Maybe the only people that know about it are the journals. And in fact, at least this you must laugh at. They say the UN discovered that people don't read UN reports. Okay. What does that mean? I mean, they employ a lot of people to write UN reports, but they discovered that people don't read UN reports. Can you believe it? By the way, a thesis, they say a thesis on average is read by about 10 people. I know Prof's thesis, a lot of people read because, he did good stuff, Prof there, but on average, they say a thesis is read by not more than 10 people. Your supervisor, your examiners, your friends, your family that you are forcing to read thesis because they have become your editors, and maybe 1 or 2 other people, So networking then comes into play there because, I mean, imagine going to LinkedIn and tell people that this is what I discovered and this and this and this, etc. I think it becomes important. Your thesis will not change the world overnight. In fact, I've advocated for the fact that even if we remove that word overnight, that statement is still true. How is that? Your thesis will not change the world. What do I mean by this? You are not contracted to change the world. I mean, look, you are being trained to become an independent researcher. I've seen students who say, my sample, like in the social sciences, students who say, my sample is, the whole of South Africa. The provinces in the country. I want to get data from all that. That's my population rather. So then you ask the student, is this a master's degree or is it a national development plan? I mean, there's a difference between a master's dissertation and a national something, right? It's not a national report you're busy with, okay? So don't try and change the world, change yourself. That's all I'm saying here. Change yourself, the way you relate to failure and things. That's what you are being trained to do. There's no perfect time to write. Do you agree with me that you can actually write whilst you are in an Uber? A lot of people don't think about it this way. But if you're a master student, you can write 2-3 paragraphs whilst you're on your way to the airport, for example. Yeah. And you can do that on the phone these days. Yeah, on a notepad. And when you get home, whatever, you can. Academia is full of egos, including your own. Do we agree on this? I've said to students, if you know that your supervisor loves their title, the supervisors who love titles, like being called professor, if you want to get an email, your email responded to very quickly from that type of supervisor, maybe you say, dear, most excellent, esteemed Professor so-and-so, right? You might get your response very quickly. But of course, this is a joke, right? You must take care of your mental health. I'm about to finish now. And your physical health too. This is very important. Don't neglect yourself. A PhD is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrate small wins. What do I mean by small wins? Just coming here or listening to this talk on Zoom, that's a win. You've done something special by just listening to a talk that kind of helped you to think better as a PhD student, etc. Celebrate that. Go to a coffee shop. If you like social media, give a post and tag me and say, today I was listening to Most Excellent. I'm joking. For sure, I'm joking. But the goal is to finish and not be the best, right? There's no best PhD. That undergraduate mindset of I want to be number one, you must throw it out of the window. You don't need to be the best PhD. You need to get your PhD. That's all you need to get. No one is going to ask you, how long did it take you? No one is going to ask you, did you get the best paper at the conference? No one's going to ask you that question. It's not necessary. It's not relevant. This is the emotional roller coaster I was talking about. There's quite a number of other pictures. I've tend to say to students, or rather to the audience, that this is the only mess the book presents. But I guess it might not be impressive here because there's mathematicians here, right? But this is the only mess the book presents, by the way. The fact that if you think about a distance speed formula, the speed goes out of the window here because in research, consistency is more important than speed. The duration is still there, but then the distance, we're talking about the research progress. I'm about to finish. These are the appendices, reflection for supervisors, institution, peers, some endorsement. But when I was writing the book, there are some of my students who said, I hope the book is going to talk about what happens after we submit. It's a very difficult position for students after they've submitted. The university just goes quiet on the student. Then students are not sure what's going on now, so I kind of put that in appendix. Student supervisor relationship, AI won't do what you can't do. That's a very philosophical statement. But our DVC advisor, Professor Moyo, was saying maybe we should also talk about AI. So this is the position I took about AI. The fact that, for you to use AI in a very excellent way, you've got to use AI to do something that you can do. If you're going to use AI to do something that you can't do, then how do you know if AI is doing it right or not? That's a difficult thing, right? Interdisciplinary research is not a project management role. We talked about this earlier, right? Then one of the last appendices here, stay out of departmental politics. What do I mean by this? There will be supervisors that will, as an honor student, without doing anything groundbreaking, they will say, let's go to the US. Sometimes why they want you to do that? Because they want to show the other team that they've got money. The other team, there's teams, right? Okay, you got the point, right? What am I saying? I'm saying there's departmental politics that you can be included in without knowing that you are being included in politics. And as a student, I think it would be great for you to stay out of departmental politics. Academic tables turn very quickly. You find that the team that is giving you this and this that you don't deserve might soon be the team that needs to go out of the department when the other head of department comes. So, this is a reality. I know what I'm talking about there, but let's not touch on it too much. We don't want to put dirty linen out there, right? Okay, understand your strengths. Sorry, your supervisor's style and strength. This is actually some feedback I got from one of the last reviewers who said, you seem to have ignored the fact that there's different supervision styles. So I also included that there. So some form of reviews there. Critical gap. I thought that was good. The reader's mindset. Message is clear. This is from Prof. Zeni, who was an acting dean at that stage at my alma mater there. Then one of the junior academics at Wits there, associate lecturer, they say it's a compassionate companion. In fact, in some other sense, because they wrote a big one, they said the book offers some mentorship in written form. I thought that was brilliant. I didn't see it that way. Then timely contribution, heartfelt guide, empathy, accessible, I guess this is the idea of being able to read the book in 7 days, etc. I mean, it's 400 pages in 7 days. That's brilliant, eh? Companionship. Essential, practical. There's some practical tools that the book presents at the end of every chapter. You know, things that you can actually use, some logs and check boxes and things like that. I'm about to finish. Practical, inspiring guide. Essential, yes. You might know Palesa. Palesa was here at Stellenbosch. Yeah, you might know Palesa. She's now at Nelson Mandela. Very kind lady. She wrote a good endorsement for the book as well. This is my last slide. A last opportunity to laugh, eh? It's going once. It's almost gone. Can you see how painful research is? Look at the postdoc. Do you have postdocs here? If there was a postdoc, I was going to give them a free book, actually. Look how painful it is to do postdoc. The whole body, eh? The PhD has got a permanent head damage there. But colleagues, thank you so much for listening. I've got some few copies. The book is available on Take a Lot and other places, but I do have some few copies here at a cheaper price if you want to buy the book. Thank you. Prof. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know.
Should I say?
What I do wrong all the time.
Is that right?
Any questions for Farai? Or comments?
Yeah, sure.
You want to come out and confess that your head is damaged?
Sure.
Can't you?
So we have 5 on mental health.
Yes.
Completion rate.
Yeah.
I think if a lot of people reflect on their own, I presume a lot of people here reflect on their own PhDs. Student, the completion rate is higher than what we're seeing. So we're on the one good side of average, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if the other side is if they have universities that are less good than that have good infrastructure in terms of.
Can imagine. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, comment on the university's good thing, but the ones who talk.
Sure.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah. Definitely.
But the mental health might.
Yeah. The infrastructure, definitely you're right. Yeah, the infrastructure could definitely help with the completion rates. But on the other side of the mental health, I think infrastructure also comes with pressure, the competition that comes with bigger universities, etc. Yeah. But that's a very interesting comment. The fact that these are averages, but there will be, of course, a whole distribution. Some on the extreme on the left and some on the right, etc.
Any other comment?
Thank you.
Please. Then you can.
It's part of the turnaround. I have sympathy for PhD students are very good in like postdoc everything. It's the right passage, right? It really doesn't have to be necessarily difficult. But the elephant in the room is the three-year PhD. So
Sure.
I think it's completely ridiculous.
Sure.
It sets the precedent for a lot of stress for everyone. Supervisor.
Yeah.
I think it's something we should tackle.
Yeah.
It needs to be longer. Yes.
It needs to be longer, but I think the challenge we have in the East African or rather global South context, the fact that we've got very limited resources. And I think that's the argument. So, you can't eat your pie and keep it at the same time, type of thing. And to think about the fact that we need so many PhDs. We need a lot. Apparently, the research shows that we need more than what we're currently producing. But then the funding it doesn't accommodate. So
But we don't need lower quality PhD.
Yeah.
We need high quality PhD.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. I think the people who want that need, I have that research, but the replacement rate. So, for every person who retires, you probably need a couple of graduates to come through the system, to come over industry, all this program. Some will not finish, some will go to industry, some will replace that one person.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that replacement ratio.
No.
What was the good?
Yeah.
But the ones who may go in South
Yeah.
are the ones who are not the best. Because like in finance, the ones who are the best who go typically clean the
Yeah.
right?
I wish Prof Moyo was here. This was a question, right? Of course, I'm joking, but I'm saying this is more often a high level type of way of looking at the problem. The fact that now people are pressurized based on the fact that you've got to finish in 3 years. And if you think about part-time students, they spend the whole year not knowing what they're doing. Sometimes at PhD level, I mean, someone is at the bank, like we have in Joburg, I don't know here in the Western Cape, but we have PhD students who are working for FNB and big banks. They can spend the whole year not knowing whether they're coming or going, but they're registered. They're very difficult.
Please.
So since like birth gives you the edge.
Yeah.
It gives you the edge. So I just wanna see if you had to do your postgrad journey all over it. What is it that you would do differently?
Well, I would read my book first. Honestly, when I did my PhD, by the way, I did my PhD prof straight from, I'd never stopped from undergrad to PhD. I did my degrees like that. And when I got to my PhD, I actually didn't know what a PhD was all about. To me, I was just continuing with my studies. But then you have this journey of discovery where you discover that, okay, so this is how things happen now. This is how things happen now. And for that matter, my own supervisor, I reflect on it in the book. I can always talk about it here. It's not a secret. The first day I would come to his office, we were doing statistical stuff. First day I would come to his office, you start doing some modeling on the computer. He was not a literature review type of person, where you say, go and read this, go and read this. He wants you to start working. And if I had done something differently, I would have wanted to have a course supervisor myself. I would have wanted to have a course supervisor, someone who is more also on the literature side of things. And I tried, by the way, to actually bring a course supervisor, but then there was some bit of departmental issues, and I don't reflect on that in the book, though. I thought that was going to be under the belt.
Support informal supervisor. So having
No, you can have mentors. Mentors, that's mentorship. Mentorship, yeah. So the PhD, like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. You find a PhD, as long as you are not, I talk about it in the appendix, as long as you are not outsourcing intellectual labor, like as long as you're not outsourcing, your scholarship. If you get support from other people, there's nothing you're doing unethical. But the moment you start outsourcing your scholarship, whether it's AI or it's a mentor that is now going beyond mentorship, writing a work, that's a problem, right? But I mean, coming to Prof here and say, Prof, you've got a PhD in physics. I want to have an idea of, what are some of the outstanding problems in physics? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. So Prof might have a list of outstanding problems in physics that he will never find time to do. And he say, here's some of the outstanding problems, go and read about them. And then you invite me for coffee. Yeah.
in terms of intellectual property, the book touch anything about commercializing because
remember, this is a survival guide, right? When I write the thriving guide, this is just for survival.
There is a question at the back.
We are doing a PhD and then the PhD part to the photo.
Yeah.
What is your opinion, your personal opinion, for the start of the photo to solve out? Photo to solve out is a physics. You agree with?
Yeah, that's a very tricky question. My answer to this might determine whether people buy my book or not. I'm joking, of course, but I'm on these postdoctoral groups, right? One of them is actually Palesa's group. I think it's a brilliant group that Palesa is running, about 700 people odd, postdocs. And I pick it up that postdocs in South Africa in general, they kind of, I don't want to use the word ill-treated or something, but I pick it up there in that group, how that postdocs are very angry, actually, with the fact that, they're not getting enough money, one. Two, they're asked to do work that they never signed up for, and things like that. Like you say, they're treated like sometimes as a research assistant or something. So it's a very difficult. Yeah. Student visa, yeah. I mean, of course, that becomes a home affairs issue, which I think it's very much up there in terms of my pay grade. I'm still on level 2, and now we're talking level 20. But I think that's a very important consideration. And it's good that we've got the director of a national institute listening to what we're talking about. I think it makes sense to look at a postdoc as more like I don't know whether it should be looked at as a research position, which I think is fair because this person has got a PhD. But the idea that, they kind of viewed as almost like research assistant, I think that's probably why even the visa issues come into play, because they're saying you're not working per se, you are coming to help people who are publishing. So yeah, I think I must stop my answer there, because otherwise I'll say the wrong thing. Yeah. Back then, people used to do proper PhDs. Yeah, people like Prof. Them, I think they used to do proper PhDs. The PhDs we're getting now, to be honest, you remember the difference between a master's and a PhD is novelty. But now people are starting to talk about novel application. So what is novel application? It's an application, but they're saying, I'm applying this concept in a space that it was never applied before. But I thought PhD is really about groundbreaking. So people are now finding, like what happens in the Constitution, people start finding loopholes. And I think that's what's happening now in PhDs, where people say, I'm the first one to apply this methodology in this setting, so I need a PhD in this setting. And I think examiners have got to be very serious too when it comes to examining PhDs, like not just examination, but even the entrance requirements. Where we are at VIS, for example, we have what we call a concept note, where students go to write a concept of saying, I'm going to do this in my PhD. And many times we see a master's concept note at PhD level, and that's an automatic decline, because the person who is applying does not understand the difference between a PhD and a second master's. Right? A PhD is not a second master's. It's not a bigger master's. It can actually be smaller than the master's, but the point is it's got to tick the box that you're doing something novel. But I mean, I promise you, if you go to some of our top institutions now, if you go to the library and check what is being graduated at PhD level, some of it might not pass at master's.
Do we have any questions online?
There's one question. It says it's from Thomas, and he says, 24-year great presentation. What will be your definition of a good PhD?
I think a good PhD thesis is something that presents some contribution to the discipline, right? Presenting a contribution to the discipline that the PhD is gotten. So if someone is saying they're getting a PhD in microbiology, the question is, what is it that they've contributed to the understanding of theories and concepts and methodologies within microbiology research? So, of course, I think there's a whole space there that some people are talking about, particularly on social media. I find it very brilliant. There's some colleagues overseas sometimes, that have got lots of followers and start talking about different types of research gaps that you can find, etc. Yeah, I think contribution is what a PhD is all about, contribution to the discipline. So you think about the wall of knowledge you need to put a break there. At least you must put a break. So if you are going to come with cement only, and you say I need a PhD, you know, I mean, at least put a break, contribute. Yeah. And this is probably why the universities emphasize the fact that you've got to get some scholarly output from your PhD, because you're not going to get scholarly output without contribution. But then again, people see loopholes. What do people do? Someone is doing a PhD in, you know, in statistics, and then they go and publish in an economics journal. They go and publish in a finance journal, publish again in a business journal, and then they want a PhD in statistics. Because I must stop now before someone chases me out of this room. But the point is, you want a PhD in statistics, but you did not publish in statistics. So, so that becomes a very difficult thing. But I think with the challenges we have, you know, funding versus the need, the perceived need, some of these things go out of hand. Yeah.
Okay. If there are no more urgent questions, then Farai, thank you very much. Thank you. And there should be some snacks and drinks just outside the door. Yeah, you're all welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Farai.